Welcome to my channel, Midsummer Myths, where you find stories like no other, packed with twists, drama, and unbelievable moments you won't forget. Today, I'm bringing you a story that will haunt you long after you hear it. Asterisk, they told us we were going to fight for freedom. They didn't tell us we'd be fighting just to keep our sanity. The first thing you notice about Bill isn't his eyes, though they carry the weight of decades. It's his silence, the kind that stretches, tense and unbroken, until you realize he's measuring every word before letting it go. Bill is 72 now, but when you hear his story, you'll understand why parts of him never left Vietnam. It was 1968 when he was drafted. Barely 20, fresh out of his small Midwestern hometown, he had never been on a plane before. Yet, here he was, in fatigues, holding an M16, stepping into a world where the air itself seemed to carry fear. The heat hit first, thick, wet, and suffocating. Then came the sound, the endless hum of insects, the distant crack of gunfire, and the whispered warnings of soldiers who had been there long enough to know that in Vietnam, death didn't announce itself. It crept. Bill's first patrol was supposed to be routine. Move through the dense jungle, keep eyes open, report back. But within hours, the routine shattered. A landmine took out the point man. 1 second, he was there. The next, the air was filled with smoke, screams, and shrapnel. Bill didn't remember hitting the ground. Just the ringing in his ears and the copper taste of blood. He learned quickly, never walk in the same footsteps twice. Never trust silence, and never, ever assume you're safe. Nights were the worst. The jungle didn't sleep, it breathed. Every rustle could be the wind, or the enemy, and when the flares went up, the shadows they cast made men look like ghosts. For Bill, the war became a blur of sweat, fear, and loss. Friends disappeared into body bags. Others returned home missing pieces of themselves, sometimes limbs, sometimes something deeper. And yet, every morning, orders came. Move forward. The first time Bill had to pull the trigger, he was barely aware of it. There had been movement in the undergrowth, a flash of black pajamas, a glint of metal. Training took over. But later that night, under the pale light of a single cigarette, he realized his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Vietnam wasn't just about firefights and ambushes. It was about the constant erosion of the soul. Every day took something from you, a little piece you'd never get back. And for Bill, the worst was yet to come. Asterisk, the jungle didn't care who you were, officer, private, hero, or coward. It swallowed everyone the same. Bill's second month in Vietnam was worse than the first. Not because the firefights were more frequent, though they were, but because the false sense of control had vanished. By then, the faces of the dead outnumbered the living in his memories, and the sounds of the war had rooted deep into his skull. One morning, their unit received orders to secure a small village suspected of harboring Viet Cong fighters. Bill had heard the whispers, "Pacify the area." It was military speak that could mean anything. The approach was tense. Every step was a gamble, every shadow a potential sniper. The village looked quiet, too quiet. Chickens darted between huts. A few old women crouched in doorways, eyes dark and unreadable. But Bill had learned that stillness in Vietnam wasn't peace. It was the inhale before the storm. The storm came in the form of sudden gunfire from the tree line. The crack of AK-47s shattered the air, and Bill hit the dirt, returning fire instinctively. Screams rang out, but it was hard to tell where they came from, enemy or ally. A soldier 2 feet from Bill took a bullet to the neck. The spray of blood was hot against his cheek, and for a moment, Bill couldn't hear anything except his own pulse pounding. When it was over, the village was in ruins. Smoke curled into the sky, and the ground was littered with shell casings. Bill remembered looking down at his hands, still trembling, still dirty, and wondering how he'd gone from mowing lawns back home to holding a rifle in a burning village halfway across the world. That night, the rain came hard. It mixed with the mud and blood, creating a stench that clung to everything. In his foxhole, Bill tried to close his eyes, but the flashes of the firefight burned behind his eyelids. Every pop of distant gunfire felt like it was meant for him. The men around him changed too. Laughter became rare. Conversations were shorter. Trust was currency, and it was spent carefully. Bill noticed that new guys, the fresh meat, would arrive with clean uniforms and hopeful smiles. But within weeks, their eyes would grow dark, mirroring his own. One evening, during a rare quiet moment, Bill shared a cigarette with a soldier named Harris. Harris had been in country 6 months and had the look of someone who'd seen too much. "Don't think about getting out," Harris told him. "Think about making it to breakfast." It was advice Bill never forgot. Every day blurred into the next, but one truth became clear. In Vietnam, survival wasn't just about avoiding bullets. It was about protecting what little humanity you had left. And that was getting harder by the hour. Some nights, the jungle was quieter than usual, and that's when you knew you were in trouble. It was during one of those nights that Bill's life changed forever. His unit had been ordered to move under cover of darkness to avoid detection. The moonlight barely cut through the thick canopy, and every step felt like it could wake the dead. Bill was near the back of the column when it happened. A sudden explosion ripped through the stillness. The ground shook, dirt rained down, and the smell of burning flesh hit him before the screams did. An improvised mine, the kind designed not to kill outright, but to maim, to demoralize. The explosion took out 2 men instantly, and another lay writhing, missing his leg from the knee down. Bill dropped beside him, pressing his hands to the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. But the blood pumped through his fingers like water from a hose. The medic arrived, shouting orders. "Keep pressure, don't let go." But even as they worked, Bill saw the life fade from the soldier's eyes. By the time the dust settled, 3 were dead, and the rest of them were left with a silence that weighed more than the heat. Bill didn't sleep for days after that. Every sound in the jungle was amplified, every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves. He kept replaying the moment, wondering if he could have done more, gotten there faster. But in Vietnam, there was no room for what-ifs. You either moved on or you didn't make it home. 1 week later, Bill found himself on point, the most dangerous position in the patrol, moving ahead of the others, scanning for tripwires and ambushes. He could feel his heart in his throat, and that's when he saw it, a glint of metal barely visible beneath the leaves. Without thinking, he signaled the unit to stop. The mine was crude but deadly. Carefully, the engineer worked to disarm it, and for the first time, Bill realized he'd just saved lives instead of losing them. It was a small victory in a place where victories were rare, but even victories in Vietnam came with a price, and Bill was about to pay his. War doesn't end when the shooting stops. It follows you home. When Bill's tour ended, he stepped off the plane onto American soil, expecting relief. Instead, he was met with something he couldn't have prepared for: anger. Protesters lined the streets near the base, shouting, holding signs, calling them baby killers. The same people he thought he was fighting for now looked at him like he was the enemy. The noise of the protests was nothing compared to the noise in his own head. Nightmares pulled him back to the jungle. He'd wake in a cold sweat, heart racing, hands clenched as if still gripping a rifle. Bill tried to go back to normal life. He found work in construction, kept his head down, and avoided questions about the war. But the past had a way of finding him. The smell of diesel would trigger memories of convoy ambushes. A sudden loud bang on a work site would send him diving for cover. It was during one of those moments, crouched behind a pile of lumber, that he realized the war had never really ended for him. The battlefields had just changed. Therapy was rare. For veterans then, PTSD wasn't even an official diagnosis yet. Bill's coping mechanism became isolation. Friends drifted away. Relationships fell apart. But one thing kept him grounded: the memory of the men who didn't make it back. Every Veterans Day, Bill visited the local memorial. He'd run his fingers over the names etched into the stone, whispering promises he knew he couldn't keep. "I'll make it count," he'd say. "I'll make sure people remember." It was there, at the memorial, that he met Sarah, a volunteer who organized events for veterans. She didn't ask him about firefights or body counts. She asked him about the man he was before the war. And for the first time in decades, Bill told someone about the fishing trips, the small-town dances, the laughter that existed before the jungle took it away. Sarah encouraged Bill to speak at schools, to tell the next generation what war really looked like, not the sanitized version in textbooks. And so, Bill began to share his nightmare, not for sympathy, but so that maybe, just maybe, history wouldn't repeat itself. Asterisk. The scariest part of war isn't dying, it's surviving when others didn't. Bill's first school presentation was nerve-wracking. Standing in front of rows of teenagers, he wasn't sure they'd care. But as he spoke about the heat, the fear, the friends he lost, the room fell silent. Some students leaned forward, others wiped their eyes. He told them about Harris's advice. Don't think about getting out. Think about making it to breakfast. He explained how that simple mindset kept him alive. And then he told them the truth, that coming home didn't mean the war was over. When he finished, the students stood and applauded, not because they thought war was glorious, but because they understood, maybe for the first time, what it really cost. That night, Bill sat alone in his small living room, a folded American flag on the table beside him. He thought about the men on that long wall of names, about the jungles half a world away, about the younger version of himself who boarded a plane not knowing if he'd come back. The nightmares still came. But now they were different. They were tempered by the knowledge that his story, their story, was being heard. That maybe, just maybe, the pain had a purpose. How did you like this story? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories from Midsummer Myths.